On the Healthy Human Revolution podcast, Dr. Lori Marbas interviews nutrition and lifestyle medicine experts and extraordinary guests whose informative and inspiring stories will empower you with the knowledge to transform your life and health.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm Dr. Lori Marbas, and guys, this is such a treat for me. I'm so excited to welcome Dominick Thompson. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm doing really well. How about yourself?
I'm good. Thank you. And so appreciate your time and speaking to us. And sure there's going to be lots of questions and really a lot of people interested in hearing so much of your story that you already have shared in many places. But I would love to hear just kind of what were the experiences that made you who you are now? Kind of a little bit about maybe your past and how you kind of got started and where you are now.
In terms of experiences, I mean, I'm originally from Chicago, born and raised, from specifically the west side of Chicago. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. I am a Generation X, 1 year shy of being a millennial, but since, the millennium started in 1980, so I still truly identify with the senior millennials. Yeah, I mean, just life in general, some experiences growing up in Chicago has truly shaped me in many capacities. I seen a lot growing up and experienced a lot growing up in our little tiny apartment in the west side of Chicago. I come from a single parent home. My mother, it was me, my mother, and my two sisters. She worked multiple jobs. She was a nurse, worked multiple jobs. And that influenced me just to really work hard in anything I applied myself to. And then there was different other influences too growing up, including being surrounded by a lot of gang activity and different drugs that was being flooded, the community is being flooded with that. So it's just a lot of different experiences. We can talk on and on about that, but that shaped me in different capacities. And then as well as in young adulthood, my experiences in prison and more shaped me too, with a lot of different decisions that I made in the future. So, but yeah, I mean, anything specifically, I wouldn't say nothing pinpoints one experience to have shaped me. It's just been a lot of experiences, multiple experiences across the board, from me seeing my first murder at the age of 5 to me doing my first triathlon as Ironman. Like, it's a lot of different timelines within this journey of life that I've been through. But it's been, you know what, I wouldn't change it for the world. It's made me a better person, and I'm always learning and I'm always evolving, for sure.
I think that's wonderful. I mean, understanding coming of an adverse background, I had a really pretty rough childhood myself. I didn't see a murder at 5, but definitely saw some things I shouldn't have seen. And it was really interesting to see how other people shape your lives and those experiences, and whether you respond to them or react to them differently. So, speaking to the childhood, and you had your influence of your family, a lot of women in your life, your sisters and your mom, and then this environment that you're around leading to prison. What were maybe the greatest lessons you learned in that point of time from growing up and then going through the prison experience? Because I know that's probably a book in and of itself, but just kind of the larger lessons, maybe someone who hasn't experienced that could maybe kind of glean from you and your wisdom that you may have to share.
Yeah, I would say one of the main things I learned, if I could tell my younger self, just things would get better, and don't stop, continue, push, because things do get better. And if anything too, challenges that you experience in life, whether it be a loss of a job, a loss of a loved one, whether it be some type of injury sustained from competing in some type of athletics, or an injury sustained from somebody trying to kill you. Life truly is full of curveballs, but you got to understand that you can't dwell on those curveballs. You can only go forward. There's only one way in life to go, and that direction is forward. We are animals. Humans are animals. We are organisms, and organisms scientifically need to move forward and in many different capacities. And I think in terms of wisdom, that is probably the best advice I could give anybody, just to continue to stay consistent and continue to be passionate about whatever you want to do in life. Don't give up on yourself, believe in yourself, and just move forward. Just keep it going. And also enjoy the experiences too, because not all experiences are bad, and not all experiences are going to be thrown your way to set you back. Some experiences just going to allow you to grow. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
To truly evolve into a lot of things. Because I wouldn't change my incarceration. If it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't be having a conversation with you right now.
Mm.
It allowed me to be removed from society to truly figure out who I was as a person and where I need to go going forward. Everybody think they know themselves, but most people don't know themselves until they are removed from a very busy society and life and the schedule, when they're sitting there in that jail cell. And then that's when you really start to understand your thoughts and really start to
Mm.
hear yourself and hear your inner energy and your inner soul really um, speaking to you in many ways that some people would never experience in life. And others that have similar experience to that, as far as inmates, are soldiers off the war. When they're in those situations where they don't know if they're going to come home, or they might be on a mission that's challenging and scary uh,
Mhm.
in many capacities. Same thing it is when you are in that facility, not knowing what may happen the next day, from a fight to someone trying to hurt you, or just no sound, or you're in a hole and experience um, some conditions that are inhumane in many capacities. So,
Mm.
but yeah, that truly made me a really different person. That timeline, specifically within my timeline.
Yeah, absolutely. And could you give us a little bit research, because I'm sure people are going to be curious what led to the time that you were in prison, and what was those pivotal moments that led you to lead a different life when you leave? Because the recidivism rate might be very high for many people, but for you, you chose a different path. So how did that come about, and what were the thoughts in your mind? Because I believe it. I mean, just today I was listening to, when I run, I try to listen to podcasts to build better myself and stuff. I'm like, boy, I just need more time to just sit and think. But I love that you mentioned that, because it's really true. We need to take time to sit and reflect. But could you share that a little bit with
Yeah,
us?
absolutely. So, like you, when I run, I used to, very minimal, 20% of the time, if I run, and if it's like on a treadmill, I may put music on. But when I run, especially outside, I never have music on. I never have headphones. Sometimes, most of the time, I leave my phone. So it's just me and that road, right? And
Mhm.
it's amazing what decision makings you can make when you're out there running and just listening to nature. And for one, too, especially, we live in some crazy times now. I don't care if you live in the most protected neighborhood in America or the most violent. You should be alert and not
Mhm.
having a distraction. That's a critical sense, to hear your surroundings, for sure.
Mhm.
I like to hear whether it's a car coming or somebody might, want to do harm or whatever. But I can't express the response and the feeling I get during that hard run outside on that pavement, without music blasting in my ear. It's just a whole different level. And it's similar to if I'm competing in a triathlon, the swim part, right?
Mhm.
You get settled in because it's a long swim. You're not swimming 50 yards and you're out. You're swimming. If you're doing a full Ironman 2.4, you're doing a half, it's 1.2. Then you get settled in. It's not a
Mhm.
it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So And every three strokes, and you're breathing, you just hear the water. It's just nature and life, and just your existence is a beautiful sound to
Hmm.
really take all in without the music and the devices and the distractions. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so that's number one. Number two. So what led me to prison? I used to be a drug dealer. Um, I used to sell kilos of cocaine that landed me in federal prison. I got indicted. That lifestyle caught up with me at the age of 21, 22, and I ended up taking full responsibility and serving time for that. Um, it's definitely not my most proudest moment, but I did what I had to do or what I thought I needed to do to be a better person. I was actually finishing up college when I got indicted
Wow.
and got into that situation. But yeah, I took full responsibility and end up serving time. I basically got like a 10-year sentence. They gave me like 5 years of hard time and 5 years of house arrest, but I got reduction for time served, good time, and also being placed in what's called a drug program that gave us additional time off from that hard time. And then I came home, and I was expected to serve a full 5-year term on house arrest where I had a curfew, and they needed to hear my vocals. It was like some CIA. It was crazy. It was crazy. The technology back then, like I can't
Wow.
imagine now. And here I was, I never been in and out of I never been out in and out of jail. It was my first time ever
Wow.
uh, being arrested and going through that process. But when you're dealing with the United States of America versus you, it's a whole different ball game. This is not the people of the state, the people of the county. This is like your U.S. government, which is scariest documents of an indictment you can get handed to you. That is for some people, it's like having a loaded gun to your face. It's when your government feel like you are in some capacity, they view you as a terrorist almost. You feel like one, like, wow, my government is coming at me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and when
Wow.
they got you, they have like over an 85% conviction rate.
Wow.
So if they serve you papers, you better believe they have enough evidence on you to convict you. So I took full responsibility. Again, that was my former lifestyle, trying to catch up because I was getting ready to finish college. And I even had my first entry level position in corporate America, working in healthcare, doing medical collections, and started off with revenue cycle medical collections. And they handed me that indictment. And I was fully honest with my employer about what just happened. Because it's not like I was actively doing that. That was just a former lifestyle that caught up from my teenage years. Because the things I was doing in my teenage years compared to what some people do in their teenage years in any timeline, any generation, it was just totally not normal. This is
Mm.
that way. Um, and so I pleaded out for possession, took full responsibility, and served my time in there. And then when I came home, the good news is I made such an impact in my position doing those medical collections because I was able to clean up this AR for this
Mm.
hospital system where they collected about 4 million in revenue
Wow.
from me alone. Uh,
Wow.
and to the point that they even at my young age put me in charge of their workers' comp negotiations. They told me that if my two bosses that was directors at the hospital um, told me if they're still in that position when I come home, they got my back. They would help me out, because they believed in me, and they felt like the situation I was in. They even wrote character letters. They knew that was not who I was and who I was trying to become. It was just an old lifestyle that caught up with me in some capacities. Um, and so when I came home, I reached out to them, and it took them a while, it took them about 6 months, almost a year, to get me back. because they had to clear it through legal and HR, but they fought like hell for me. And it went all the way out to the CEO of the hospital, and I got approved to go back into work for these people. And I took that. It was a breath of fresh air because you don't get very many second chances in life like that. And I took it and ran and worked hard, worked my butt off to prove myself. Like that was like my second chance at life itself, to work in a corporate setting for a hospital. And since my crime was a nonviolent offense, and it was strictly dealing with powder cocaine and distribution, not abuse or nothing violent about my crime. And that kind of helped in some capacities with me getting back to be employed in that way. And I never looked back. I excelled. I really excelled and got promoted to the point that now not only was I left that type of skill where I was actually negotiating and managed care contracting for this hospital and dealing with managed care specifically, network development, and went to their sister company to run 2 IPAs, to help run 2 IPAs and do negotiation when it comes to the physician contracting and the hospital contracting and dealing with the payers, to the point that I was making a little name for myself with these. It's a small network. Managed care contracting, for anyone that listening in network development, it's a very small community, of people that know each other and reach out to each other when they need each other or want you to work with them and stuff like that, because they just know good folks. And my boss groomed me. He was a former lawyer and taught me how to draft contracts and read them and enforce them and more. And may he rest in power right now. But he was that's the first time I ever had a guy, working professional, and a white guy at that, mentor me, take the time to show me everything he knew. And I was very thankful for that. I had a very great relationship with him. He passed away years ago from cancer, but he was an amazing guy. I got nothing but kind words for him. He was a good dude. And so I took that position and ran with it. And then another company recruited me because another colleague that used to work with me. And I went to that company. I went to Tennessee to run Tennessee and Georgia and South Carolina and the Carolinas, and the rest is history. I just excel running multiple markets for this $9 billion company that was responsible for the payers, the bucas of the world, as well as for the hospital systems. We brought them together to provide access for patient care, POS and PPO plans. So yeah.
That's awesome. That is a lot of work, and I'm thankful for people like you that can do that stuff. Coming from the healthcare side. So that says that you have vast business experience, the entire thing. How did this transition to social entrepreneurship, veganism, becoming the activist that you are now, the athlete? So like, how does that bridge? That's so interesting.
To show you my timeline, my age, because there's a lot in there, right? I know I don't look my age. People don't believe me when I tell them I'm 42. But
I understand.
Yeah, you too. You look amazing.
I'll be 51 in October, so.
I thought you was like in my. I assume based on your experience, you was at least in my range, but you make me.
Yes, I'm a true Gen Xer. And my oldest kid, I have 3, 27, 25, and almost 23.
What? Those of you listening, if you can see this beautiful woman, she looks so young. That's crazy.
Oh, thank you. No, my daughter just graduated medical school, and we moved her to Boston.
Yeah, so. I think I've seen that on my timeline, and I'm sure you're very proud of her.
Oh my gosh, yes. My husband's Filipino, hence all the children are quite dark and don't look anything like me. But we're pretty excited. All plant-based eaters. You be proud.
That's amazing.
I birthed one. I birthed a plant-based diet, guys. That I've done my duties.
Well, you have Jedi Knights. That's a beautiful thing.
All I can do. That's all I can do.
Or-
But
or-
yes,
yeah,
tell us with your veganism. Tell us.
yeah. Yeah, so speaking of vegan, I guess that's a good segue into like stop eating meat in prison.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's where I stopped. That was 21 years ago. I was sitting in my jail cell, trying to figure out what I was doing in this jail cell. Like, what is the universe trying to tell me? I'm not religious. I'm spiritual. Um, I I strongly do believe in energies and unknown powers and a hierarchy. I wouldn't say a hierarchy. Let me be careful with that word, but more so, definitely something more powerful and unknown than anything science can define. And if you stop to really think about it, scientists or even religious scholars and people, everyone has a theory, right? It's you could consider it complex. It's a very complex and kind of comical for some things where you have these two sides fight about no, this is real, this is not real, and this is not real, and that's not real. But one thing they do have in common is the fact that they don't stop to think that something comes from something. It's just infinite. Like there is something coming from something. Like whether you think we come from stardust or the ocean, or you think aliens from another planet dropped off these offsprings, these humanoids, or we come from a rib or atom, but we come from something. We're engineered from something. And I think it's so fascinating. And also one of the things in life that us humans can stop to realize that we simply don't know. We don't know. Like we are so egotistical and want to know like it's our way or the highway. Like this is what it says in the Bible, or this is what the math and the science says and the logic says over here. But we don't stop to just say, that's one thing in life we simply don't know. There's no University of Heaven and there's no University of Stardust. We just have theories and thoughts, and we have our own beliefs. I have my own beliefs too, but that's one thing I will totally go on record to say I simply don't know, and I'm okay with not knowing, and I'm okay with not knowing, and I wish more human beings would be like that because we'll probably get along better in many capacities. Like if you want to believe that there's Allah, Jesus, God, a Trinity, or you want to believe that we do come from a different planet or come from microorganisms or whatever, and that's fine, but just know that that's a theory. And there's no monopoly, there's no definitive answer out there. And I just wish more people would stop to realize that that's the most logical, to me, way you can view life and respect others and their beliefs.
We're all connected. There is no doubt that, and I think quantum physics is really cool because we're defying what we think physics is, and laws are being broken, and that stuff is so cool. Anyway, yes, we are all connected. There's no debating that for sure.
And we're forever learning. It's always new information coming out. And especially recently with the fascination of these UAPs and UFOs, and more just like finally the Pentagon is finally relaxing, like, you know what? Yeah, we just don't know what that is.
we were just, no kidding, because being military and hearing things, and I'll just say I was in the Air Force, but my son, my youngest, is just fascinated with this whole concept of the UFOs and stuff. So literally we're just just talking about, I think it's a new documentary off of Netflix that came out regarding the UFOs, like literally right before we jumped on this interview. That is so funny. Yeah, it was, well, I don't think it came out today, but he was telling us about it today. So my husband was like watching, he's like, you should watch this. And because a lot of it happened, I grew up in New Mexico, in eastern New Mexico, not far from Roswell.
Well, you probably see some things, right?
I saw something when I was 12 years old. I'll just say that was not, it was okay. So it was a full moon in New Mexico. I grew up in a pretty interesting place, but anyway, so there was no lights and there was a full moon, and literally there was a bright light people are gonna think I'm crazy, but this is what I saw. The bright light came to the moon. It was the same size as the moon. It stopped. It was really slow. Up. It stopped, and then it just went to the right a little bit, and then it went poof and disappeared. And I was like, I don't know what that was, but I was like, nothing I've ever seen. It was just a circle of bright light. Just whoop, and off it went.
I know a lot of people that live in that region and the West Coast in general that's seen things that are just unexplainable. And that's what I feel like society is shifting and finally understanding and coming to terms that, yeah, we're not alone. I mean, I think, and most of us always felt that way, but a lot of us been scared to talk about it or had their own experiences. But now it's socially accepted to be like, yeah, no, we don't know what the hell that was up there.
Yeah, I know. I'll just say it was seared in that young mind. I was like, oh my.
And I love hearing more about it. I wish the governments of the world would release more information because they have a lot of information. I feel like society maybe historically wasn't ready to be shocked by stuff because they didn't want everybody just going instantly rogue and just like, like anything, they fear the worst if they release too much dangerous information because people may respond not in a healthy way. But I think if anything that this pandemic has taught us that the human spirit is stronger than you can imagine and can deal with some things, like I think especially the younger generation, they're growing up in a way
they're amazing.
Yeah, they are. They are. Like, people always talk a lot of nonsense about Gen Z, but there's some amazing, brilliant minds in that generation that I simply adore. And I love to see them really holding humanity accountable in many capacities.
And they just see things and think things and are just very clear and transparent with emotions, with what they're thinking, and open for discussion. And it's having raised my 3 kids, I just sit there and look at them and I'm just in awe of who the humans they are. I was just like, I don't know why God gave you to me, but I'm so happy. I'm pretty excited about it. And so
critical thinkers, right? They're
oh my gosh, I just used this word last night. I was like, like my generation, like we need to understand critical thinking. We have lost the skill.
You have, right? There's a fog in some people for sure. And you got to stay fresh. And you're in a good position when you have these beautiful, young, brilliant minds you're accessible to you, where they can kind of like refresh your thoughts.
Yep.
Keep you on point.
They keep me on task. Don't tour about.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Oh yeah. But anyway, back to when you were. How did you go into the place where you are?
So I was trying to figure out, the meaning of my life at that point in that jail cell, and I got down on my knees, and I prayed and opened up. I was vulnerable and opened up my thoughts to the universe in many ways, where I was just trying to figure out what is my purpose? Why am I here? I get for every action, there's a reaction and there's consequences, but removing all of that, I felt like there's a bigger picture that I'm missing. Why was I removed from this busy society, getting ready to finish college? My first entry level job. I feel like I was doing things right. It's not like I was an active drug dealer. Yeah, I had a former life, but I ran away from that. Like I resigned. I was done. Like I was trying to just be a better person. And here I was in this position, this vulnerable position. And everything pointed to a childhood memory. This infamous small story that I'm gonna tell you, but everything just pointed to when I was 8 years old, viewing something on my plate, which was chicken wings at the time. And I have always been a very picky, finicky eater. Like I can never sit up there and eat any meat attached to a bone, let alone chicken wings, with all those tendons, small tendons and dried up vessels and veins and all that cartilage right there. And it's like, if you look at your forearm, you're pretty much digging in your forearm, trying to go through the different the veins just to get to the flesh. And I would like pick at the meat when you got some people out there savagely would just clean it. And I never could do that. I never could do that. So here I was looking at these chicken wings, like these little bitty arms, and my mother was there. I looked at her, I looked at those wings, and I looked back at her, and I just like, I can't do it. She's like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "They look like little bitty arms." and and she looked at me like, "Huh." And that was, this is the 80s, right? And that's something that she didn't know really how to handle. Like I was like questioning, like, what is food? Like this, I knew that it came from animals. Like I just knew, and I couldn't have nothing to do with it. And so she smartened up, and she eventually started buying me a lot of fish sticks and anything else where it's like kind of wrapped in this presentation where there's no bones attached. But that memory came up in my thoughts where right then and there, and it's just like I was this energy, unknown, powerful energy, just schooled me right there on what karma is. Like you need to, if the universe presents you with something and you don't see through it, and you I don't care if you're an 8-year-old Dominick or an 80-year-old Dominick, if you turn your back on it, I feel like it will return in some type of form. Whether we're talking about disease, sickness, or health, financial, a loss of a loved one, your loss of yourself, anything. And that's what I feel like I was experiencing in prison. I feel like I was very in that moment in time, should have kept on pushing and going down that rabbit hole, but I chose to like, okay, this is what I need to eat. And that was the universe putting me in that situation to understand that I should not be a part of anything causing any type of harm. And that's when I created a mantra right then and there for myself, that if it requires harm, then no, I don't have anything to do with it. Right then and there, I denounced and made a promise to the universe that I would no longer eat meat. And I never looked back. I would trade my sides and carbs with my cellmates. I'm sorry, I would trade my meat and the carbs and the sides with my cellmates. And they looked at me like I was a crazy and I was a weirdo, and they was happy to swap it out. They're like, you don't want your chicken or you don't want your beef, or because it's not like they serve you a big portion of meat protein, at least back in those days. They didn't do that. And so that's what I did. I went vegetarian. I stopped eating meat right then and there, and I never looked back. I was vegetarian for 10 years. And then eventually, when I learned of the dairy industry, because I thought, so for the listener, just so you know, vegetarianism and veganism back in those days, we're talking 20 years ago, was kind of connected to each other. They was part of the same community. Vegetarianism was almost viewed as veganism in many capacities, where it was considered enough. And you had a lot of the vegetarians out there like, leave animals alone. But a lot of us didn't know that what was truly happening in the dairy industry. The dairy industry had an iron fist and clad about what information was released to the public in terms of their farming practices and more. And luckily, we had great documentaries finally exposing them, such as Earthlings and more, that really did a deep dive and turned a lot of vegetarians vegans at that time. So yeah, that was my I made that promise. And I promise you one thing a lot of vegans don't talk about, or people that do this for ethical reasons, because this was ethical. I didn't want to have anything to do with destroying the animal or being a part of any harm. And that includes going back into my community to help distribute drugs in it. So, but one thing I would say, when I took on this lifestyle of peace and kindness, everything went 180 for me. Now, I mean, it's no secret what it could do for your health. I went down I was over 250 pounds when I went down. My lowest was like 87, 85.
Wow.
I became one of the strongest guys in the prison system because we would have liftoffs. And I was like top 10
Wow.
liftoff of a population of about 1,200 to 1,500 inmates. But we would get it in on a weight pile. And there I was lifting heavy weights. Like my body transformed instantly, like within two months, once I stopped eating meat. And I was very jacked and very strong. It was crazy. All fueled by complex and simple carbs. And there I was just benching over 400 pounds to squatting over 400 pounds to deadlifting over 400 pounds up to 500 pounds and more, like it was nothing. And just killing it. And my body, that was the first time in my life where I felt like I was almost a superhero, like the transformation and the experience, just to feel these different sensitivities and different energy was I guess you can compare it to someone maybe taking a drug. Like even though I sold a lot of cocaine, the only drug, and it's not even considered a drug no more to most, I still consider it a drug. It's marijuana. That's the only thing that I had experience with, but I never took in any drug or any psychedelics because I'm not engineered for curiosity. I'm okay with being in the now. That's just who I am as a human being. I'm okay. I don't need to get high to feel like life is great, and I don't need to run away from anything. But that's just me, that's just me. And so with that being said, that was the closest experience I just had to feeling like shit. I got a red cape on. Like it felt so strong and it was incredible. It was a great experience. Better than even when I used to play football.
Wow.
I never looked back. That was 21 years ago.
Wow. No, I've only, we went plant-based 9 years ago, working on our 10th year overnight. When a patient of mine, just by accident, I was in Western Colorado in a little town, and patient said, meat and dairy upset my stomach. I said, stop eating it. She came back in 30 days with her daughter, who was 16 at the time and had ADD. But she goes, you tell Dr. Marbas what you did. She actually pulled her out of school to come to her mother's appointment. And she goes, well, I was just helping my mom, because we lived in a town called Rifle, Colorado. Okay, you can imagine what type of town this was. There's no vegan, and especially in 2012, early 2012, there's no vegan options available. And she goes, I felt so good, I just stopped my meds. And I was like, what? And I said, that's the coolest thing ever. So I was like, what did you eat? She goes, well, what you said. I was like, no, really, what did I say? And it was literally, I was like, so right after that, I Googled plants and ADD, and I had T. Colin Campbell's book, China Study, come up, and literally within 2 weeks, and another patient with lupus who got better. And very long story short, we overnight went plant-based at home with a 13, 15, and 18-year-olds and my poor husband. And some really funny things that happened in that time, and we've never looked back. But you mentioned these memories. My daughter was 2 years old, a very vocal child, and very alert and always observing. And we were in a grocery store, so they have the live lobsters banded in grocery stores, and I never really thought anything of it. But Emily was like, Mom, why are there lobsters here? She understood groceries meant eating, and I was like, well, they cook them. And she's like, it like dawned on her that this moving living creature was going to be on a plate somewhere, and she was really upset. And she honestly, I mean, for a couple of weeks was just talking about it. And I never as a mother, I never took it in and understood exactly what that meant on a scale of like, wow, she's seeing this so innocently. This is a life not taken in. I just see now, I look back, and there was just many instances where that occurred. And my middle kid, Jonathan, severe dyslexia, went on to graduate college and all that good stuff. But part of the things that we did for him was, Jonathan, I said, to help with his writing, reading, I said, let's write a book together. And so we ended up writing this book when he was 10 that I ended up finishing when I was deployed to the Middle East. He lost interest after a while, but it ended up having this very strong vegan theme. And I was just like, I still wasn't vegan. So it's like, you have those connections. The universe is like, yo, pay attention. And it
Also,
finally opens. Yeah. So
I
I
think also too, it kind of it taps into an energy within yourself that
get
makes you more sensitive. Like you go back to, because I consider myself an empath. I've always been an empath as a little boy. It's a gift and a curse.
it.
But that skill set really became even more sensitive and really amplified when I went plant-based. It's crazy how your mind, your whole state of mind changes when you remove that violence of energy that you consume through a meat-based diet that's full. It's just full of violence. Of course, it's full of carcinogens and other harmful ingredients, synthetic.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you are consuming something that died violently. And I don't think a lot of people really stop to think about that. 'Cause energy, to me and to even some scientists, is very real. And I'm sure in the future we will see some amazing, more critical case studies on just exactly how powerful energy can be. Like we have in recent years the other things that blew our minds as human beings.
There are so many things that I could talk about right now with that.
Sure, I know. Yeah.
Oh my.
When I relaunch my podcast, I'm gonna have you on. We're gonna talk about it.
Okay, because there is just some in medicine, and it's really interesting. You're so blessed to have people tell you so many. It's such an honor to be a part of someone's health journey, and they tell you their most devastating, painful things that people don't tell other people that they don't prepare you for in medical school. They're like, by the way, they're going to be telling you these very deep and dark secrets sometimes, and you can't tell anyone, and you're going to have to deal with it. And you're like, oh, you're going to have to be with someone when they die. Like, oh, it's a growing experience, to say the least. But yeah, absolutely, that energy is so important. And what's really cool too is when patients or people and doctors switch to this way of practicing medicine, it is like the light just turns on and they are just glowing with just excitement and energy, and they just want to help even more. And that it's like they go from being burned out to just being amazing humans and want to touch people in more ways. It's just so much fun to be a part of that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful community. It just really transforms you in ways that you probably didn't know existed within yourself.
Absolutely.
It makes you love to and have just genuine compassion for life, and just realize how precious and how short life itself is. It really is. It's just like people don't stop just to be like, inhale that energy, that air, because tomorrow's not guaranteed. It's not.
Exactly. And the other thing is this way, I always thought I appreciated my experiences and connections and relationships with people until going on a plant-based diet and then really seeing, the ethical component of that, because that kind of follows, it's for a lot of people who mentor this in health, and then the ethical thing, you just kind of meld into it. It's really interesting. But now I understand it's like this amazing day is so important because tomorrow may not be here, but each person has such a beautiful experience to share, each animal, each insect. And it's just, I saw this recently when I was in Boston moving my daughter. My son helped us move, Gabe, and we were in line to get on a harbor to see the Boston harbor, and a bee came out of nowhere and literally landed on Gabe's hand, and I filmed it. I had my camera on my phone. And he's just sitting there like this calm human. And he's like, oh, look at this, there's a bee. And we're talking, and we started talking about the bees. And he's like, I'm very good friends with John Pierre. I don't know if you know John, JP.
No, I never heard of him.
Oh, I'll have to read. He's amazing. But, he's worked with Ellen DeGeneres, and he's, all these amazing people. But he's one of these ethical vegans for like 35, 40 years. And he's just like, what would JP do? I was like, what would JP do? He's like, he'd take him to that flower. And so Gabe just walked over and put it on the flower. And I'm like, we wouldn't have done that. What would have been a different human if Gabe hadn't grown up as a vegan And it was just a really cool thing to see. I
I
think,
wanted to like, try to hurt.
yeah,
them.
yeah, it was pretty cool. I mean, it was a lesson for me too. I was like, Lori, what would you have done? I was like, I'm not sure I'd have been as calm, having been stung by a bee.
These things hurt. I don't think if you have never been stung by a bee, it's not a fun feeling.
No, and this one still had the stinger too. I was like, holy mackerel, I'm impressed, Gabe. But tell us about your business ventures. I mean, you're this.
Yeah. So I have 2 small startup companies. Because of my platform so when I was in my 30s, after, like I said, I spent my 20s dealing with the legal system, and then finally in my 30s was like able to stop to really look back and really look at where I'm at now, to realize that, okay, I'm back on my feet. I made it through a very difficult timeline, and when I was like around, I want to say 32, 33, early 30s, a friend of mine, a childhood friend of mine, was like, you should get on this cool app. You're always talking about veganism, and I was already doing things behind the scene, trying to convince C-level suite executives that run these hospitals just how critical it is to bring back preventive care and to eat more whole food, plant-based, because preventive care was like non-existent in healthcare. It still is to this day, pretty much non-existent, because there's really no money, profits in preventive care. So I was doing a lot of secret stuff with respect to policy reform at a corporate level and in the healthcare community, but also I would speak about things to my community of friends and family and loved ones and colleagues. And this friend was like, yeah, it's a cool app, man. You can just use it like a blog style or do whatever you want to do, but I think you'd be good for it. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, it's called Instagram. I was like, Instagram. Like, what is Instagram? And so he's like, just download it, Dom. Trust me. And I downloaded it, and I've seen all these people just doing selfies, and I was like, that's not me. And I felt like I was a little bit too old to be doing selfies. Just didn't get into it. But he's like, trust me, man, just do it. He's like, social media is the future. This before you even had what's called an influencer, before social media was even social media.
Right.
You don't even have Facebook at the time, and Facebook was still very new. We had just Facebook and MySpace, and like social media was not a thing to someone from my generation, right? He was like one of those very critical thinkers. So was I, and that's why he was trying to get me to download this app and to use it to kind of express myself and communicate to the world. Because if you think about it, social media, there's pros and cons to it, but social media is really your phone and you texting out the world your thoughts. It really is. It's your megaphone. You just really speaking your thoughts. If you have a public profile, and you can organically grow. And that's exactly what happened to me. I didn't have time to run a blog and do Tumblr and all that stuff. I was just like, I'm gonna just create this Instagram. And here I was living in New York City in my New York apartment, my fancy New York apartment, making 6 figures as a healthcare executive. How my ex-girlfriend, who was a lawyer, like I was, considering where I come from, it was a crazy, I manifested this stuff though. And it was, life to me couldn't get any better considering I come from humble beginnings. Here I am working in healthcare, living in a doorman building in New York City, and I'm surrounded by these big buildings and look, what they say about New York is real, the concrete jungle, but it's a different energy. And I used to be biased coming from Chicago, but New York is definitely special in a lot of capacities. It's very special. And so I got caught up in that energy, like, because I just started running. I started, running like New York run clubs, being a part of that. Awesome. And also too, because I kind of like spent a lot of time in the gym, not because I was trying to look a certain way, but that was around the time I switched from vegetarian to vegan. And I just had this phenomenal energy. I just need an outlet for it. So I found myself going to the gym 3 times a day. I was doing 3-a-day work.
Oh my gosh.
So much energy. Like I wasn't doing it to look away, but I was wired. Like, and then my diet was, we didn't, so again, to the listener, we didn't have the Beyonds of the world, the Gardens of the world. Back then, we just had tofu. My diet was whole food, plant-based in many capacities,
Right.
and also fruitarian. I used to do a lot of smoothies because I was always on the go, and I ended up this fruit smoothies galore. We
Oh.
all these fancy vegan powders, like, you know, it was like, and I was wired,
Oh.
just running. I would get up and run, and I would work out at Equinox during the daytime.
Oh
Just
my goodness.
home and work out before me and my girlfriend, we would have dinner, like, you know. And so I use this app just to kind of highlight and showcase my lifestyle and talk about human rights and animal rights, things that I was passionate about. And it organically took off. It took off
Awesome.
because at the time, what you thought a vegan male was two types. They both was white men. One was either like a middle-aged ultra endurance athlete, like a Rich Roll. Me and Rich Roll actually was introduced into the community around the same time. That's why me and Rich Roll, we go way back. Anti-Rich Roll. Yeah, I come from background of Rich. And by the way, Rich is a great guy. I can say that because I know Rich and he's a good dude.
Absolutely.
And then also the second type was like some guy that was like a surfer that would say, yeah, let's go into, you know, the forest, the whole hands, and get high and do some psychedelics or whatever. Like, I was just the opposite, but both was white guys, and here I was a black male from Chicago, from the hood, served time, no nonsense, and I had size on me, you know, like a
Right.
lot
Well, now you're an exec in New York.
right. And now I'm executive in New York, and here I was talking about animal rights, and also I didn't have no filter because I was definitely one of those more radical vegans. Just speaking my thoughts, whether you like it or not, I would tell my truth and what I thought was the reality of what was happening to these animals. And the vegan community, it was fresh to them. Like, they just jumped on me in terms of ascended who I was, and my account became the largest vegan male account at the time. It just grew literally overnight, to the point that NPR News reached out to me because they felt like defining masculinity through veganism. And then once NPR News reached out, then other news source, ABC News, Men's Health Magazine, Muslim Fitness Magazine, Esquire, all these different pieces over these different timelines. And then NYU reached out to me and they're like, hey, can you come speak to our student body about climate change? I was like, what? I'm just working in healthcare and got this big Instagram account, but I was becoming a big deal to some media store. But when NYU asked me to do it, that's when my speaking tour kicked off. One university asked me, then the rest of them follow. It was just like through word of mouth and then health conferences. So, and I never looked back. And that's how my social media presence and me, who I am, became about. Just organically being who I am, just a kind person, just sharing my experiences. It was nothing strategic about it. I do realize today there are a lot of gimmicks out there. There's a lot of even college courses teaching kids about social media itself. And you have different generations, especially the younger generation, that really want to be social media stars, but it's inauthentic. And if anything, the listener can take away from me, just be yourself. And it could be a beautiful experience. When you can communicate the things you love, like I did. And that's what I did. I communicated that to the point that I decided to, like, with this new fame, what better way to use this platform than to do some good and help raise some funds or talk about different initiatives. So I created an initiative because the poaching crisis was at an all-time high with the elephants in Africa at the time, with the poaching. And I thought, what better way to bring awareness to that than to create like a t-shirt and like a t-shirt campaign. And to me, all the vegan shirts on the market was corny anyway. They didn't fit who I was and my swag. You know, they were just corny. So I was like, you know what, I'm always telling people to eat plants. And what I want to talk to them and raise awareness about is the largest walking vegans. Technically, the largest walking vegans, mammals, are elephants. And I was like, they just need to eat what elephants eat. And boom, it was like a light bulb went off. Eat what elephants eat. And so I designed the logo, slapped it on my Jack torso at the time. I didn't know it was going to do good, and shared it on my platform, and it went viral. We
Wow.
sold like over 5,000 units our first year. There was me and my ex-girlfriend, my girlfriend at the time, working professionals in our little New York apartment, spent our evenings and weekends fulfilling orders. And she hated me for she was like, I can't believe we're doing this. And to me, it was surreal to see orders going from our apartment in New York City to Australia, to Austria, to India, to LA, to Canada. It was crazy. To the
Awesome.
point that the second shirt that I created rivaled that shirt. Clark Kent was vegan. And then Molly Cyrus slid in our DMs. Like, yo, man, can you send me some goods, some swag? We was already popping and lit. Like our brand was
Wow.
I created this brand, our house, Crazies and Weirdos. But when that A-lister slid in our DMs, I didn't think nothing of it. I was like, and I didn't have a social media manager at the time. I was still working our account. Like she didn't know that we behind the account. Taking the message. And it was crazy because she was like, I'm a big fan, and my boyfriend Leanne, which eventually went on to be her husband, he's a big fan of this guy Dominick Thompson, and she didn't realize she was talking to me, like on the other end, like I didn't know that this was going to be this little company. Like I was still trying to experience. Like here I was working my account, and then I had this other account just for the clothing. Believe in appreciation because customers. Our customers became our brand ambassadors, and they found Miley Cyrus. She found us, and we sent her a care package, and 2 weeks later, my phone lights up like a Christmas tree. She posted to her 33 million Instagram followers at the time. That's how many followers she had at that time. With one in her mouth and middle fingers up, saying "Go vegan," and it was really, like, surreal. It was pretty cool to see that. Like I was like, damn, we arrived. Like and we just got too big to the point that I had to resign from corporate America, or the company was doomed. I had to run at speed and full capacity, and I never looked back. I resigned from corporate America, left New York, moved to Atlanta, because I was always going to come back. I was in New York for 6 years. I was getting burnt out, and the goal, I was never going to stay in New York. I was only out there for work, and my ex too, she was out there for work, but she wasn't coming back either. And I left. And then one of the problems that was occurring through my speaking engagements was the fact that I was causing this disruption, in a good way, where people was like, okay, you got me, I want to go vegan, how can I go vegan? But there was no companies that I felt comfortable endorsing to help them transition from omnivore to vegan. I didn't know these companies. I didn't know who was behind these companies, who ran them. So that's when I formed the sister company to Crazies and Weirdos. I formed a food and nutrition company. We borrowed a slogan called "Eat What Elephants Eat," and we formed that company and created this amazing meal planning program that's created with RDs. We got macro, micro information, and food coaches and more. We got over 3,000 recipes. So we teach people how to eat plant-based, and we never look back. We literally got thousands and thousands of subscribers, and all because I was causing this incredible disruption on the speaking market, on the speaking circuit, and through my social media presence. And now we're moving into, so that's phase one of our company, which is amazing what we have done. We are one of the largest meal planning and also one of the most known food and nutrition companies in the vegan space. Like everyone recognizes Eat What Elephants Eat throughout the world, in the vegan world. And it got to the point, like we originally was going to partner up with Emory University. That's how big of a deal we were getting ready to become in the beginning, through the brand recognition and what I have done. But now we're moving into our superfoods that's coming out next year, as well as our juice and smoothie bars. and our restaurants. So that's what
Wow.
we got going on in the next 2 to 5 years, is this next lines of services being introduced through Eat Well Elephants Eat, which is our main mantra, is to make plant-based eating not only accessible, but more important, affordable.
Hmm. Absolutely. Wow. Oh my goodness. Yes, I totally get. We launched plant-based telehealth. My business partner and I actually right in March of last year, and then during the pandemic, it took us a year. But we're in all 50 states. We
Right.
just, yeah, I have 50 licenses myself, medical license, but we have 8 docs, and we're about to add our ninth later this summer. But we're in all 50 states offering a plant-based lifestyle medicine physician, and we're in our, I guess, 16th month, 17th month, and growing by leaps and bounds. And it's been quite a ride, I'll tell you, transforming medicine in this way capacity. But it was a need, like you said. You see something, and you don't trust these companies, and there's
Yeah.
not a national lifestyle plant-based lifestyle medicine program or practice. And I spent the last 10 years trying to do my best. I did all sorts of stuff to do that, and we just launched it. But it was I understand. I understand what it is when you're like, the doctor's like, we've interviewed over 50 doctors. We have thousands of patients. And it's funny, is like, they reached out and they go, I'm really interested in joining plant-based health. Can you please pass this on to your HR? And Anthony, you're like, we are. Here's the HR, here's the admin, here's
Yeah.
the marketing team, here's the but yeah,
Yeah.
it's a fun thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But hey, if your people ever need docs, we're available. We've got some Dr.
Yeah.
Clappers with us. So yeah.
I'm sure that there's some way we can certainly work together, without a doubt. Same thing, your patients need like meal planning.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure there's a
Yeah.
way we can link and collaborate in, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's because it's phenomenal to me. Like you said, how many people are just, they don't know. Like, I literally, when I had my first patient from South Dakota, they're like, there are no plant-based doctors in South Dakota. I was like, and this is why we're doing what we're doing. I had my first one in the interior of Alaska the other day, and I was like, oh my goodness. So we have international more clients, because we can't really practice medicine, but we can, guide them. But when you have someone calling you from Egypt, you're just like, this is amazing. So
Yeah.
it's pretty awesome. I
Yeah.
get it. I totally get it. So wow. And I'm past the time. I apologize, but you just have such a phenomenal story.
Good.
Oh, wonderful. And so obviously you're on Instagram. So tell us where and how our listeners can reach out and support you and look into more of the
Yeah.
things that you offer.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Doms Thompson, or you can go to our website to support us, or if you want to join the herd, we call it the herd. And Ewa Elephant Eat, our acronym is EWE for short, almost like Kiwi. So if you want to join the EWE herd, yeah, you just go to eatwellelephantseat.com and click on that link in the onboarding process, whether you want to eat healthy, or you want to get stronger, or you just want to be an ethical vegan. We truly guide you from beginner level to, if you feel like you're a guru in the kitchen, to a college student, or working mom, or whatever. We have all types of members, and we cater to everyone. So yeah, you can find us at eatwellelephantseat.com.
That's awesome. And thank you so much, for your time. And I so appreciate your spirit and your wisdom and sharing your life with us. That was amazing. Thank you.
No, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that video. Before you go though, please hit the subscribe button and the alert button so you will be notified whenever we upload any new videos. On Monday, we upload the Healthy Human Revolution podcast. Now, if you'd rather listen to the podcast, you can find it on all the major platforms, such as iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and even Spotify. On Tuesdays, we upload the Doctor's In. This is where I answer your questions. Thinking of that, could you please comment below any questions you might have about health or wellness, or any topics that you would like me to cover? Now, if you're looking for more resources on how to start a plant-based diet, sustain a plant-based diet, exercise, recipes, anything regarding wellness, we've got you covered. check out healthyhumanrevolution.com. And again, thanks for watching.